A Roman nobleman spat in Epictetus's face. The former slave, now philosopher, calmly wiped his cheek and said, "I must remember that when you open your mouth, something unpleasant might come out." The nobleman expected rage, violence, or at least wounded pride. Instead, he encountered something far more devastating: complete immunity to his attack. The insult had found no target. The arrow had struck armor so sophisticated that it simply dissolved on impact. This is the power you're about to discover. Not the fake strength of pretending words don't hurt. Not the brittle shield of anger that shatters with the next blow, but the unbreakable fortress of genuine Stoic wisdom that transforms every insult into an opportunity, every attack into advancement, every attempt to diminish you into a chance to demonstrate your undiminishable nature. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in Rome, was regularly insulted by senators, mocked by enemies, and betrayed by friends. Seneca faced vicious criticism, exile, and eventually forced suicide. Yet these men didn't just survive insults. They transcended them. They discovered a secret so powerful that their insulters often became their students. Their critics became their admirers, and their enemies became confused by their own powerlessness. Today, you learn their secret, not as ancient history, but as practical technology for modern life. Because whether it's a cruel comment online, a cutting remark from a colleague, or a devastating criticism from someone you love, the Stoic response remains the most powerful tool ever developed for maintaining your dignity, your peace, and your power in the face of verbal assault. The world has never been more full of insults. Social media has weaponized words. Cancel culture has made verbal attacks into public executions. Road rage, online trolling, workplace hostility, we swim in a sea of verbal violence. Yet the Stoics, living in times of actual physical violence, developed methods so effective that they remain unmatched by modern psychology. What they knew, and what you're about to learn, is that the power over insults doesn't lie in avoiding them or defeating them, but in transforming your relationship with them entirely. 1. The nature of the wound. Before you can master the Stoic response to insults, you must understand a fundamental truth that changes everything. No one can insult you without your cooperation. This isn't motivational nonsense, it's philosophical physics. An insult requires two participants, someone to deliver it and someone to receive it. Without your participation as receiver, an insult is just sound waves dissipating in the air. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does." But he went deeper. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. This isn't denial, it's recognition that the harm from insults doesn't come from the words themselves, but from our judgment about those words. Think about it. If someone insulted you in a language you don't understand, would you be hurt? The sounds would reach your ears with the same force, the speaker's intention would be identical, but without your ability to decode and internalize the message, no harm occurs. This proves that the injury doesn't exist in the insult itself, but in your interpretation of it. Consider a deeper example. A small child calls you stupid during a tantrum. Do you feel wounded? Most adults laugh it off. Why? Because you don't grant a child the authority to assess your intelligence. The word stupid hasn't changed. Your relationship to the source and your interpretation of the meaning has changed. This demonstrates that you already have the power to neutralize insults, you just haven't been applying it consistently. Epictetus distinguished between what he called initial impressions and judgments. When someone insults you, the initial impression is automatic. You hear the words, understand their meaning. But the judgment, this person has harmed me, my value has been diminished, I must defend myself. That's your choice. And in that space between impression and judgment lies your freedom. The wound from an insult is self-inflicted. This isn't victim blaming, it's empowerment. If you're the one creating the wound through your interpretation, then you're the one who can choose not to create it. The insulter provides the raw material words. You decide whether to forge them into weapons that hurt you or tools that teach you. Consider how children process insults before they learn to be wounded by them. A toddler called stupid might laugh and continue playing. They haven't yet learned that these sounds should hurt. We teach them to be wounded by our reactions, by showing them that certain word combinations have the power to destroy peace. The Stoic path is, in a sense, unlearning this conditioning. But this doesn't mean becoming emotionally numb or pretending words have no impact. The Stoics weren't interested in suppression, but in accurate assessment. When someone insults you, something is happening. The question is, what exactly is happening, and what does it actually mean? An insult is information. It tells you about the speaker's state of mind, their values, their pain points. It tells you about your relationship with them. It might even tell you something useful about yourself. But one thing it doesn't do is change your intrinsic worth. Your value as a human being isn't a democracy where everyone gets a vote. It's not a stock price that rises and falls with public opinion. It's a constant, unaffected by the sound waves someone chooses to emit in your direction. 2. The mirror principle. Seneca discovered something profound about insults. They reveal far more about the speaker than the target. Every insult is a confession, he might have said if he were writing today. When someone attacks your character, they're showing you their values. When they mock your appearance, they're revealing their superficiality. When they belittle your achievements, they're exposing their insecurity. This isn't just philosophical comfort, it's practical intelligence. Every insult is free information about the person you're dealing with. They're literally telling you their weaknesses, their fears, their areas of sensitivity. The angrier the insult, the more pain they're carrying. The more specific the attack, the more it reveals about their own struggles. Consider the psychology of insults. Why does someone choose to insult rather than engage in productive dialogue? They feel threatened, inadequate, or powerless. The insult is an attempt to transfer their discomfort to you. It's emotional hot potato was. They're in pain and trying to make it yours. Understanding this transforms your perception of every insult from an attack on you to a cry for help from them. Marcus Aurelius used this principle when dealing with the Senate's constant criticism. Instead of defending himself against each attack, he would study them like a scientist studying specimens. What does this criticism reveal about the critic's fears? What does this anger show about their frustrated ambitions? This transformed every insult from an attack to be defended against into data to be analyzed. He wrote in his personal journal about a senator who constantly attacked his philosophical interests, calling them weakness unfit for an emperor. Rather than defend his love of wisdom, Marcus analyzed, this man values only power and sees philosophy as threatening to power. He fears that thinking deeply might reveal the emptiness of his own pursuits. His insult reveals not my weakness, but his shallow understanding of strength. Think about the last time someone insulted you. Strip away your emotional reaction and examine the insult objectively. What must be true about someone who would say such a thing? What pain are they carrying that would make them want to transfer it to you? What insecurity are they trying to manage by attempting to make you feel insecure? A person who calls you ugly is revealing their own obsession with appearance. Someone who calls you stupid is showing their insecurity about intelligence. Someone who mocks your achievements is exposing their feelings of inadequacy about their own. The insult becomes a window into their soul, and what you see there often evokes pity rather than anger. This isn't about excusing bad behavior or justifying cruelty. It's about understanding reality accurately. A wounded animal bites not because it's evil, but because it's in pain. A person who insults others is revealing their own internal state. Your choice is whether to take on their pain as your own or recognize it as theirs to carry. The mirror principle also applies to truth and falsehood in insults. If someone calls you lazy and you know you work 16-hour days, the insult reveals their ignorance or dishonesty, not your character. If someone calls you ugly when you're comfortable with your appearance, they're revealing their shallow values, not your worth. The insult becomes a mirror showing the insulter's reflection, not yours. Epictetus took this even further. He taught that when someone insults you, they're actually doing you a favor. They're showing you who to avoid, what values to reject, what kind of person not to become. They're providing a negative example that clarifies your own positive path. In this way, every insulter becomes an inadvertent teacher. 3. The Aikido response. The Stoics developed what I call the Aikido response to insults, using the attacker's force against them without adding your own violence. Just as Aikido redirects physical attacks using the attacker's momentum, Stoic wisdom redirects verbal attacks using the attacker's emotional energy. Epictetus perfected this technique. When criticized for his lameness, he'd agree, "You're right, my leg is indeed lame. Is there anything else you'd like to point out?" This wasn't self-deprecation or weakness. It was masterful redirection. By agreeing with obvious facts, he removed the sting. By asking for more, he showed the critic's impotence. The attacker expected resistance and found nothing to push against. There's a documented incident where a young noble mocked Epictetus for being a former slave. Epictetus responded, "You're correct. I was enslaved in body for many years. It taught me to recognize freedom of mind. Have you found your freedom yet, or are you still enslaved to opinion, to comfort, to the need to insult others to feel significant?" The young man had no response. The attack had been redirected so skillfully that the attacker found himself on the defensive. Marcus Aurelius practiced a variation when senators accused him of weakness. "If I am weak in the way you describe, then I thank you for pointing out an area where I can improve." This response accomplished multiple things. It acknowledged the possibility of truth in criticism, demonstrated humility, showed commitment to growth, and completely diffused the attack's emotional charge. But the Aikido response isn't just agreement. Sometimes it's reframing. When Seneca was accused of hypocrisy for preaching poverty while being wealthy, he responded, "I never said wealth was evil, only that it's not good. I have it, but I don't need it. If it disappeared tomorrow, I would be the same person. Can you say the same?" He didn't defend or deny. He reframed the entire conversation from moral judgment to philosophical precision. Another powerful Aikido technique is the genuine question. When insulted, instead of defending, ask, "What specific behavior are you referring to?" Or, "Can you help me understand what I did that gave you that impression?" This forces the insulter to move from vague attack to specific critique, often revealing the emptiness of their accusation. It also shifts the dynamic from combat to conversation. The most advanced form of Aikido response is what I call the philosophical pivot. When someone insults you, pivot to the larger philosophical question their insult raises. If someone calls you a failure, respond with, "That's an interesting point. How do you define failure? Is it not achieving conventional success, or is it not living according to one's principles? I'm curious about your philosophy." This elevates the conversation from personal attack to philosophical discussion. The key to the Aikido response is maintaining complete emotional neutrality while remaining intellectually engaged. You're not ignoring the person or dismissing them. You're taking their attack so seriously that you examine it without emotional interference. This often confuses and disarms attackers who expect emotional reaction as confirmation of impact. 4. The power of pause. Between insult and response lies a space. In that space lies your power. The Stoics understood that immediate reaction is almost always wrong reaction. The pause isn't hesitation, it's the gathering of strength, the summoning of wisdom, the activation of choice rather than reflex. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. But this power requires a moment to activate. The immediate response comes from your triggered ego, your wounded pride, your conditioned patterns. The considered response comes from your wisdom, your values, your chosen character." When insulted, count to 5 before responding. In those 5 seconds, ask yourself, what would my best self do here? What response would I be proud of tomorrow? What would Marcus Aurelius do? What would Epictetus say? This pause transforms you from reactive victim to responsive agent. The pause serves multiple functions. Physiologically, it allows your initial fight or flight response to subside. Your heart rate begins to normalize, your breathing steadies, your muscle tension releases. This physical calming enables mental clarity. You literally think better after a pause than in the immediate heat of insult. Psychologically, the pause demonstrates self-control. The person who can pause after being insulted shows mastery over their impulses. This display of control often impresses observers more than any clever comeback could. It shows that you're operating from strength, not from triggered emotion. The pause also serves a strategic function. It demonstrates that you're not easily provoked, that you're considering the statement seriously, that you're in control of yourself. This often unsettles the insulter more than any quick comeback could. They threw a grenade, and you're examining it like a curious artifact, rather than diving for cover. Seneca practiced what he called the evening review, examining the day's interactions, including times he was insulted. But he also practiced the morning preview, imagining potential insults and preparing responses. This mental rehearsal meant that when insults came, he had already practiced the pause, already considered responses, already chosen his path. He would write, "Today I may encounter ingratitude, dishonesty, and insult. I will pause before responding to each. In that pause, I will remember who I am, what I value, and how my chosen character would respond. I will not let others' weaknesses become my own through hasty reaction." The power of pause extends beyond the immediate moment. Sometimes the most powerful response to an insult is no response at all. Not from weakness or fear, but from the profound strength of deciding that this person's opinion doesn't warrant your energy. As Marcus Aurelius noted, how much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says. The pause can extend indefinitely. You might choose to respond hours, days, or even weeks later when emotions have cooled and wisdom has crystallized. Or you might choose never to respond, letting your silence speak louder than any words could. The pause gives you options, and options give you power. 5. The examination protocol. When you receive an insult, the Stoics recommend a systematic examination rather than an emotional reaction. This protocol transforms you from victim to philosopher, from wounded to wise. The examination has 4 parts: source assessment, truth evaluation, utility analysis, and response selection. First, assess the source. Is this person whose judgment you respect? Are they qualified to evaluate what they're criticizing? Do they have your best interests at heart? Marcus Aurelius wrote extensive notes about this process. When criticized by a notorious corrupt senator, he wrote, "Consider the source, a man who has betrayed every principle for personal gain. His criticism of my integrity is like a blind man critiquing a painting. The opinion itself reveals the speaker's limitations, not mine." The source assessment isn't about ad hominem dismissal. It's about appropriate weight assignment. The opinion of someone you respect who knows you well deserves consideration. The opinion of a stranger on the internet who knows nothing about you deserves proportionally less weight, perhaps none at all. Second, evaluate for truth. Strip away the emotional charge and examine the factual content. Is there any accuracy in the criticism? Even a broken clock is right twice a day. Even an enemy might point out a genuine flaw. If there's truth, then you've received valuable feedback regardless of its delivery method. If there's no truth, then you've learned about the speaker's dishonesty or ignorance. Seneca demonstrated this when accused of being a bad teacher. Instead of defending, he examined, is there truth here? Have some of my students failed to grasp my teachings? Yes. Could I explain more clearly? Probably. Then I've received useful feedback wrapped in hostile packaging. I'll take the gift and discard the wrapper. Third, analyze for utility. Can this insult, regardless of its truth or source, be useful to you? Can it teach you about how you're perceived? Can it reveal blind spots in your self-awareness? Can it provide practice for your Stoic principles? Epictetus taught that every situation, including being insulted, is an opportunity to practice virtue. He specifically taught his students to welcome insults as training opportunities. When someone insults you, he said, they're volunteering to be your sparring partner in philosophical practice. They're helping you develop patience, composure, and wisdom. Should you not be grateful for free training? Fourth, select your response from a position of choice rather than compulsion. You have options: agree if it's true, correct if it's false, ignore if it's irrelevant, engage if there's value, withdraw if there's not. The key is that you're choosing based on wisdom rather than reacting from emotion. This protocol might seem cumbersome, but with practice it becomes instantaneous. You develop what Seneca called philosophical reflexes, the ability to process insults through wisdom rather than ego in real time. The examination becomes so rapid that observers see only your calm response, not the sophisticated processing that produced it. The transformation technique. The highest level of Stoic response to insults is transformation, turning the attack into an opportunity for growth, connection, or teaching. This isn't about being a doormat or turning the other cheek from weakness. It's about being so powerful that you can transform negative energy into positive outcomes. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated this when his own son publicly disrespected him. Instead of punishment or anger, he saw an opportunity to model virtue. His calm response taught more about character than any lecture could. The insult became a teaching moment, not just for his son, but for everyone watching. He wrote about this incident. Commodus seeks to wound me with words, not knowing he provides me with opportunity. The opportunity to show that a father's love transcends a son's disrespect. The opportunity to demonstrate that true strength doesn't require retaliation. The opportunity to teach through example rather than punishment. Epictetus transformed insults into philosophical discussions. When called ignorant, he'd say, "You're right, there's much I don't know. What specifically would you like to teach me?" This transformed attackers into teachers, insults into invitations for dialogue. Many of his students first encountered him as critics and stayed as disciples. One famous incident involved a wealthy merchant who came to mock the slave philosopher. He insulted Epictetus's poverty, his lameness, his low birth. Epictetus responded by asking the merchant about his own life, his fears, his hopes. Within an hour, the merchant was weeping, having realized his wealth hadn't brought him peace. He became one of Epictetus's most devoted students. The transformation technique requires seeing beyond the surface interaction to the human need beneath. Someone insulting you is often someone in pain, someone feeling threatened, someone desperately trying to matter. By responding to the need rather than the insult, you can sometimes transform an enemy into an ally, or at least into someone who walks away questioning their own behavior. Seneca wrote letters to his critics, not defending himself, but exploring the philosophical questions their criticisms raised. A criticism of his wealth became an essay on the proper use of resources. An attack on his character became a meditation on virtue. He transformed insults into philosophy, attacks into art. But transformation isn't always about converting the insulter. Sometimes it's about transforming yourself. Each insult is an opportunity to practice virtue, to strengthen your philosophical muscles, to prove to yourself that you've internalized these principles. The person insulting you becomes your unwitting trainer, helping you develop strength they don't even know exists. The transformation can also be creative. When insulted about his writing style, Seneca wrote some of his most beautiful prose, not to prove the critic wrong, but inspired by the criticism to explore new forms. When mocked for his philosophical interests, Marcus Aurelius deepened his studies, not from defiance, but from renewed commitment to what he valued. 7. The strategic advantage. Mastering the Stoic response to insults provides strategic advantages that extend far beyond the moment of attack. When you respond to insults with wisdom rather than emotion, you gain power in every arena of life, professional, personal, and social. In professional settings, the person who can't be provoked becomes unbeatable. While others lose their composure, make emotional decisions, and reveal their weaknesses through angry responses, you remain clear, logical, and focused. You become known as someone who can't be rattled, and this reputation itself becomes a form of armor. Consider a modern workplace scenario. A colleague insults your presentation in a meeting, calling it amateurish and poorly thought out. The typical response would be defense or counterattack. But imagine responding with, "I appreciate your feedback. Could you point out specific areas you found amateurish? I'm always looking to improve." This response accomplishes several things. It maintains your professionalism, it puts the insulter on the spot to provide constructive criticism, and it demonstrates to everyone present that you're focused on excellence, not ego. Marcus Aurelius faced constant attempts to provoke him into rash decisions. Enemy leaders insulted Rome, hoping to trigger an emotional military response. Senators attacked his policies, hoping to make him defensive and vulnerable. By maintaining Stoic composure, he made better decisions and earned respect even from his enemies. He documented one incident where a Germanic chieftain sent an insulting message, calling Romans weak and effeminate. His generals wanted immediate retaliation. Marcus paused, examined the insult, and realized it was designed to provoke exactly that response. Instead, he sent a message back, thanking the chieftain for revealing his strategic intentions through his provocations. The psychological impact was devastating. The chieftain realized he was facing an opponent who couldn't be manipulated through emotion. In personal relationships, the ability to handle insults without retaliating creates space for real communication. When someone you love says something hurtful, your Stoic response can de-escalate conflict and open dialogue. Instead of trading wounds, you can address underlying issues. Instead of defending your ego, you can defend the relationship. 8. The social dynamics of composure. The social implications of mastering Stoic responses to insults extend beyond individual interactions. When you respond to insults with composure, you change the entire social dynamic around you. You become what I call a pattern interrupt in the predictable script of social aggression. Most social interactions follow predictable patterns. Insult leads to counter-insult. Attack triggers defense. Aggression escalates aggression. But when you respond to insults with Stoic principles, you break the pattern. This creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance in observers. They expect one thing and witness another, forcing them to reconsider their assumptions about how interactions work. Socially, the person who responds to insults with grace becomes magnetic. People are drawn to those who demonstrate genuine strength, and nothing demonstrates strength like remaining composed under verbal attack. You become a safe person to be around because others know that even their worst moments won't trigger your worst responses. This creates what Seneca called philosophical gravity, a kind of social weight that draws others into your orbit. People begin to moderate their behavior around you, not from fear, but from inspiration. They see that another way of being is possible. They witness that strength doesn't require aggression, that dignity doesn't demand retaliation. Conclusion: the invincible character. As we conclude this exploration, remember that the Stoic response to insults isn't about becoming invulnerable. It's about becoming invincible. The difference is crucial. Invulnerable suggests nothing can touch you, which is neither possible nor desirable. Invincible means nothing can conquer you, which is entirely achievable through Stoic practice. Every insult you receive is an opportunity to practice these principles. Every attack is a chance to demonstrate your philosophy. Every attempt to diminish you is an invitation to show what true strength looks like. You're not trying to avoid insults. That's impossible in a world full of pain and projection. You're developing the character that transforms insults from weapons into tools. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his private journal, revealed that he too struggled with insults, felt their sting, experienced the urge to retaliate, but he chose again and again to respond from wisdom rather than wound. This choice, repeated countless times, built the character that history remembers. Not a man who was never insulted, but a man who could not be conquered by insults. His meditations show the work behind the composure. Today, I was called weak by those who mistake aggression for strength. I felt the familiar heat of anger, the desire to prove them wrong through force. But I remembered the truly strong person is one who has power and chooses not to use it destructively. My restraint is not weakness, but strength so profound it doesn't need to prove itself. Seneca faced criticism that would destroy most people's peace, accusations of hypocrisy, challenges to his integrity, attacks on his character. Yet his writings show not bitterness but wisdom, not defensiveness but depth. He transformed a life full of insults into a legacy of insight. Even his final insult, being ordered to commit suicide by Nero, his former student, was met with philosophical composure. His last words were teachings, not curses. Epictetus, insulted for his slavery, his lameness, his poverty, became one of history's greatest teachers on human dignity. Every insult he received became material for teaching others how to maintain their worth regardless of others' words. His wounds became wisdom, his scars became scripture. Students would sometimes try to insult him just to watch his masterful responses, to learn from his example. You stand in this lineage. Every time you choose the Stoic response over the emotional reaction, you join this tradition. Every time you pause instead of react, examine instead of explode, transform instead of retaliate, you build the same invincible character they built. The world will continue to produce people who insult others. Pain will continue to seek company. Insecurity will continue to attack confidence. This is not your problem to solve. Your only task is to develop the character that remains undefeated regardless of what words are thrown at it. Remember, the person who insults you reveals their character. How you respond reveals yours. Make sure that revelation is one that would make the Stoics proud. Make sure your response demonstrates the principles you claim to hold. Make sure that when the dust settles, you can look back without regret, knowing you responded from your highest self, rather than your triggered ego. This is the way of the Stoic. Not because it's easy, but because it's powerful. Not because it avoids conflict, but because it transcends conflict. Not because it makes you liked, but because it makes you unbeatable. The next insult you receive is not an attack to be feared, but an opportunity to be seized. It's your chance to practice these principles, to demonstrate this wisdom, to build this character. It's your invitation to show the world what true strength looks like, not the brittle strength of ego that shatters at the first blow, but the flexible strength of wisdom that bends without breaking, that absorbs without shattering, that transforms attacks into advantages. You now possess the tools. The next insult will provide the opportunity. Between the insult and your response lies your power. In that space, choose wisdom, choose strength, choose the Stoic way. This is how you become not just cool, logical, and unbeatable, but something far more valuable, a person of such developed character that insults become irrelevant, critics become teachers, and verbal attacks become proof of your philosophical progress. The ancient Stoics faced insults that could cost them their lives. You face insults that can only cost you your peace, and only if you allow it. They maintained their principles under threat of death. Surely you can maintain yours under threat of words. This is your challenge. This is your opportunity. This is your path to invincible character. Walk it with the confidence of someone who knows that no arrangement of words, no matter how sharp, can pierce the armor of genuine Stoic wisdom. The training ground is everywhere. Every difficult person is your sparring partner. Every harsh criticism is your weight to lift. Every insult is your opportunity to prove that you've internalized these teachings. Not to others, their opinion is irrelevant, but to yourself, the only judge whose verdict matters. Go forward with this knowledge. Face the world's verbal violence with philosophical peace. Transform every insult into insight, every attack into advancement, every attempt to diminish you into a demonstration of your undiminishable nature. This is the Stoic way. This is your way. This is the path from wounded to wise, from reactive to responsive, from conquered by words to unconquerable by any force. The next insult awaits. Meet it with wisdom. Transform it with composure. Transcend it with character. You are ready.